central London in the opening months of 1995. The entire dance music counterculture is still in shock after the passing of Michael Howard's Criminal Justice and Public Order Act 1994, which has only recently come into force. In spite of major opposition from the hard left, with particular reference to the outlawing of illegal rave parties, squatting and other measures aimed at marginalising still further certain ever more disaffected elements within the now highly politicised youth movement centred around the ever-burgeoning hardcore dance scene, a Tory majority in both Houses of Parliament has now ensured that the most controversial piece of politically motivated legislation since the poll tax is now a legally enforceable reality. In the wake of the previously anticipated street violence occasioned by the anti-CJB demonstrations that have accompanied the media hue and cry in the run-up to the passing of the bill, the act has been described in the pages of independent leftist political journal Red Pepper as the drawing of battle lines to protect the right of protest and to lead alternative lifestyles. Hackney, North London, in the immediate build-up to the passing of the bill, an all-night hardcore industrial techno rave party organised, promoted and to a large degree musically performed by the self-styled techno-terrorist revolutionary sound system Spiral Tribe, themselves the physical embodiment of everything that the now largely discredited and morally bankrupt Little Englander Tory party of the time represent. Spiral Tribe are the hands-on street-level DIY culture representatives of the united youth culture opposition to everything that is presently being championed by the bland, middle-of-the-road mediocrity of John Major's ever more sleaze-ridden government. To many, a very viable alternative to the leather-on-willow country village cricket club mindset of Major and his mistresses, Spiral Tribe, as co-founders of the so-called Advance Party, are in the vanguard of the counterculture resistance to the bill. Old Street in London's East End, early winter 1992, another landmark underground event promoted by the equally legendary Vicarage Crew, a group of politically and artistically motivated squatters intent on creating their very own version of urban regeneration and renewal.
November the 6th was when we came in.
When we took this place, it was purely going to be a workspace. It was going to be a space for people to rehearse for bands or use it. We've had artists here using it as studios because we've got a lot of space here. So we deliberately didn't make it a house to live in. It was only like during this year, at various points when we got stuck for somewhere to live, we gradually moved into it.
So you've lived here before?
Yeah, the building's been open for about 6 years now. It was closed for about 9 months and we decided to come back in just to do parties. It was a friend of mine, Richard, and I, and it's just kind of grown from there.
We left the whole of the lower part of the building empty so we could use it for functions. We've done stuff for the local community. There's a community centre up the road and we've done loads of sponsorship with them. Like we've done a parachute jump, we've done an evening when we went down all these pubs and we were just all playing instruments and raised a lot of money for the community centre.
So how long exactly have you been holding parties for?
For the whole year. We came back in and 3 days later did a party. I mean, this was why we came back, just to do parties. It wasn't really as a living space for squatters or anything like this. We've been plugging away. We did have a little time off during the start of the summer where a lot of people went to Berlin. I went off to Mallorca for a couple of weeks just to get a bit of sun, a bit of rest. Came back, everybody grouped together and we started doing parties again. But that was only over a couple of months.
Another hardcore techno live set from pagan DJ Yaz. It is events such as this in one of London's premier underground squat venues that the bill is intended to criminalise.
So what do you think of the energy generated here tonight?
Pretty good, I'd say, for a squat in London. Pretty good energy.
I'm 30. I don't want to be doing nothing for the rest of my life. I'd like to take this a little further and maybe make a little niche for myself for a bit longer, because it is possible doing this kind of thing to make a living.
Spiral Tribe at home in their London Squatland bedroom studio. It is supposed noise pollution such as this that Major's government was seeking to outlaw, given that raves such as the one that we have just seen had been responsible for emptying out large numbers of Tory-owned pubs and thereby hitting the equally Tory-owned breweries where it hurts. It should come as no surprise that high Tory sleazemonger-in-chief Neil Hamilton was to be linked in the press to the controversial parliamentary brewers group. Thus, it is also unsurprising that the Vicarage Crew's neighbours seemed less worried about the apparent noise than the government.
So you've got a pretty incredible track record with uninterrupted parties, haven't you?
Well, yeah, this time the nearest we came to any problem with the police was they came and said, the music's loud, we've got complaints from the hotel across the road. And that's, I mean, for me that's just tourists, so that's only, they're not going to be there in 2 weeks' time, so it's not a problem, we just turned the music down. But before that, there've probably been around 80 or 100 parties in this building, and there's never been a bust, never any problem at all.
And it's a good building because it's isolated, and so you don't get complaints from people. I mean, we've soundproofed it anyway, but it's not like some neighbours next door, so it is a building you can use without sort of winding people up. I mean, we get on really well with the local community. In fact, it's like ridiculous because you get people turning up in the middle of the week, like women from the estate, 60, 70-year-old women, and they've got sofas for you, and you've got 5 sofas inside, and they go, "Don't worry, you won't go cold this winter. We'll make sure." And they're giving you clothes the whole time, and we don't need them and that. But it's, we get on okay with the local community, which is good. And we're using the building.
Spiral Tribe have proved that you can do it. I mean, there's obviously room for party organisers with different kinds of music as well. As a squatter, how do you feel about the idea of squatting being made illegal?
Well, I find it strange, I mean, because there are so many homeless people anyway, but I mean, I suppose it doesn't really fit in with sort of conservative politics, actually, because it's not sort of a money-making exercise in itself. But it just, it seems a bit stupid when there are empty buildings which are just left as investments for years and years. I mean, the owners have got several homes, they're, rich people. To leave a building empty when there's people who could live in it, it seems, stupid. I mean, because, we'd be prepared to pay rent. I mean, I've always had that policy myself. We get in contact with owners when we go in there, whoever they are, and, and offer to, pay rent. But if it's an empty building being left, and, all these council, it's a broad subject because, you see the squatting private properties and the squatting council properties. And the thing about council properties is there's a lot of empty council properties, and the councils, they say, don't have the money to, make these buildings occupiable for normal tenants. But, some of these buildings stay empty for years, and, flats, houses, they stay empty for years. And if squatters go in there, a house is going to be kept in better condition if there's people living in it, because they're putting on heat and they're getting all the utilities of the house working, and so it'll be kept in better condition. I mean, obviously some people are going to wreck a place, but generally speaking, if it's your home, that's the last place you wreck, really. And I don't know, housing should be some sort of right,
In the urban dereliction of Luton, Dunstable and Leagrave, Spiral Tribe's Bedfordshire counterparts, the Exodus Collective, transformed an abandoned old people's home and a derelict farm on the fringes of a never-completed road widening project into a housing action zone for the homeless and a viable community farm for the socially disenfranchised underclass of the riot-torn Marsh Farm estate. Their reward for so doing, not a community award for the three main instigators of the initiative, but a series of police arrests and other harassment, culminating in the trial of collective founder member Paul Biggs-Taylor on contrived charges of murder, with government departments exposed in the Guardian newspaper as one of the main causes of the national housing crisis. Such situations can be viewed in proper political perspective. Here in Vauxhall's Bonington Square, a committed group of socially and community-minded squatters transformed an area of derelict houses that had been allowed to die into a living and vibrant inner-city community. In the run-up to the passing of the CJB, the square, which featured in a landmark BBC documentary by veteran social campaigner and filmmaker Jeremy Sandford, was, like Kentish Town's One World Rainbow Centre, part of a network of DIY community centres in the forefront of the battle to kill the bill. At the very hub of the national network of community activists committed to the struggle against this, one of the most draconian pieces of legislation ever devised was Brixton's Cooltown Arts Centre, headquarters of the anti-CJB Freedom Network, with much of the thrust of the CJB being directed primarily at the underground dance scene. The Cooltown was thus destined to become one of the primary underground venues on the South London electronic music scene. As well as a contemporary 1990s centre for political radicalism, every bit as successful as Haight-Ashbury had been to the West Coast founders of the 60s hippie revolution, Brixton's Cooltown Arts Centre was to become the epicentre of a movement in underground music, filmmaking and creativity easily as innovative as that which had preceded it some 2.5 decades previously, the influence of which is still being felt even today. In addition to becoming the focus of some of the most avant-garde artistic events of the mid-90s underground, the Cooltown was also a beacon of positive energy and vibration, largely void of the dog-eat-dog criminal mentality of the Tory-created social underclass of the desert of urban dereliction by which it was surrounded. Thus, Howard's Bill can likewise be seen for what it was, an instrument for the fracture and destruction of urban communities for the benefit of the super-rich, a socio-political development that can perhaps be compared to the passing of the Highland Disarming Act of 1746, which had paved the way for the Scottish Highland clearances of the century that was to follow, and with the effective destruction of an already largely disenfranchised community successfully in place, the stage was set for the binge-driven, dumbed-down, celebrity-obsessed mediocrity of contemporary media banality. Taking this into consideration, then, it is perhaps significant that no politically focused youth movement to either succeed or to rival punk, rave or the hippies has stood up to challenge the establishment during the entire New Labour regime of Blair, Brown and Russell Brand.